My name's Lena, and I've been riding the subway since I was a kid. It's my lifeline, gets me to my job at the diner, to my mom's place uptown, to anywhere that isn't my cramped apartment. I know its quirks. The way the lights buzz, the stale coffee smell of the stations, the unspoken rule to mind your own business. But last Tuesday, something happened on the 6 train that I can't shake, something that's got me taking the bus instead, even if it costs me an extra hour. It was late, around 11 p.m., and I just finished a double shift. The platform was nearly empty, just me and a guy in a hoodie scrolling his phone. The air was heavy with that mix of humidity and motor oil you only get underground. When the train screeched in, I shuffled toward the last car, habit from years of avoiding the crowded middle ones. The doors slid open, and I stepped inside. Empty. Perfect. I dropped onto a seat, the cracked vinyl creaking under me, and pulled out my earbuds to unwind. The train lurched forward, the overhead lights flickering like they always do. I was half listening to some podcast when I noticed her, a woman sitting at the far end of the car, near the door to the next one. She hadn't been there when I got on, I'd swear to it. She was small, hunched over, wearing a gray coat that looked too thin for the November chill. Her hair hung limp, dark and stringy, covering her face. Weird, but not my problem. I turned up my volume and stared at the floor's gum-stained tiles. A few stops passed, Bleecker, Astor Place, and she didn't move. Didn't check her phone, didn't shift in her seat, nothing. The train rattled on, and I started to feel it, that prickling on the back of my neck, like someone's watching you. I glanced up. She was still there, still as a statue, but now her head was tilted slightly, like she was listening. To me? To the train? I couldn't tell. The lights flickered again, and for a split second, I thought her shadow stretched too far along the wall, like it reached past where it should have stopped. I shook it off. Tired brain playing tricks. But then, at Spring Street, the train jolted hard, harder than usual. The lights cut out completely, plunging us into black. My earbuds died too, leaving just the hum of the tracks and my own breathing. I fumbled for my phone, the screen's glow cutting through the dark. When the lights snapped back on, she was closer. Not at the end of the car anymore, but 3 seats away, still hunched, still silent. My heart kicked up a notch. I hadn't heard her move. Not a rustle, not a step. "Hey," I said, my voice louder than I meant. "You okay?" No answer. She didn't even flinch. The train picked up speed, the windows showing nothing but the tunnel's blur. I gripped my bag tighter, telling myself she was just some eccentric, maybe drunk or high. But that shadow thing happened again. Longer this time, curling up the wall and across the ceiling, like ink spreading in water. It didn't match her shape, didn't match anything. At 14th Street, a few people got on. A guy with a guitar case, an older woman with grocery bags. Relief washed over me, safety in numbers. I kept my eyes on them, avoiding her. But when I chanced to look back, she was 1 seat closer, her hands folded in her lap, knuckles white. The air felt colder now, sharp against my skin, and there was a smell, faint at first, like damp earth or old flowers. It wasn't the subway's usual stink. The guitarist started strumming, and the older woman muttered about the noise, but the woman in the coat didn't react. The train hit 23rd Street, and the new passengers got off. Just me and her again. My stomach twisted. I stood, aiming for the door to the next car, but the train jerked, throwing me back into my seat. The lights dimmed, and that smell got stronger, clogging my throat. When I looked up, she was right across from me, her head still down, hair still hiding her face. "Please," I whispered, though I didn't know what I was asking. The train slowed for 28th Street, and I bolted for the door as it opened. I stumbled onto the platform, gulping air, and turned back. She was standing now, right at the edge of the car, one hand on the pole. The doors hissed shut, and the train pulled away, but not before I saw it. Her head lifted, just enough, and where her face should have been, there was nothing, just a smooth, blank stretch of skin, like a mannequin's. My legs gave out. I sat there on the grimy platform, shaking until a station cleaner asked if I was okay. I mumbled something and dragged myself home, taking the stairs 2 at a time to my apartment. I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that blank face, felt that cold creeping in. The next day, I called out sick and dug online. Subway stories, urban legends, anything. I found a forum post from a few years back. Some guy claiming he'd seen a woman like her on the 6 train. Same gray coat, same eerie stillness. He said she followed him, stop after stop, until he got off and she didn't. Another post, older, called her the last passenger, said she only shows up in the last car, late at night. No one knew who she was or what. Just that she picked someone, and they're never quite the same. I've taken the bus since. Costs me more, takes longer, but I can't face the subway. Not yet. Last night, though, I was walking past the station entrance on my way home. It was quiet, the streetlights buzzing, and I swear I heard it. A faint tap of footsteps, slow and steady, coming from the stairs below. I didn't look back. My name's Sam, and I'm a barista at a 24-hour coffee shop downtown. I pull the late shift most nights, which means I'm stuck taking the subway home when the city's asleep. It's not glamorous, spending my nights steaming milk and dodging drunk customers, but it keeps me afloat. The subway station near work is one of those old, sprawling ones. Cracked tiles, humming lights, and tunnels that seem to go on forever. During the day, it's packed with commuters, but after 2 a.m., it's a ghost town. Just me, the stale air, and the distant screech of metal on tracks. That night was a Wednesday, bitter cold, with a wind that sliced through my jacket as I descended the station stairs. My shift had run long, and I was beat, my sneakers squeaking on the damp steps. The platform was deserted when I got there, bathed in the sickly yellow glow of fluorescent lights that flickered like they couldn't decide whether to stay on. I checked my watch, 2:15 a.m. The next train wasn't due for 10 minutes. I sighed and leaned against a pillar, scrolling my phone to kill time. That's when I heard it, a low whistle, sharp and deliberate, cutting through the silence. I looked up, frowning. The platform was still empty, but the sound had come from somewhere close, maybe down the tunnel to my left. I figured it was the wind or some maintenance crew messing around. Subways are noisy, right? But then it came again, longer this time, like someone calling out. My skin prickled. I shoved my phone in my pocket and scanned the shadows, telling myself it was nothing. A minute later, I saw her, a woman standing at the edge of the platform, maybe 30 feet away. She hadn't been there before, I would have noticed. She was small, wrapped in a gray coat, her dark hair spilling over her shoulders. She faced the tracks, perfectly still, like a statue. No bag, no movement, just standing there. I cleared my throat, thinking maybe she hadn't seen me. "Hey, you okay?" I called out, my voice echoing off the tiles. She didn't turn, didn't even twitch. Unease coiled in my gut. I took a step closer, then stopped. Something about her felt wrong, like she didn't belong here. The air grew colder, a draft sweeping up from the tunnel, carrying the smell of rust and wet stone. I glanced at the schedule board, 8 minutes until the train. I could wait it out. Then my phone buzzed. I pulled it out, expecting a text from my roommate, but it was a photo. My breath caught. It was the platform, this platform, taken from behind me, showing me leaning against the pillar, the woman in the distance. My hands went clammy. I whipped around, but there was no one else here. Just me and her. Another buzz, a new text. "She's waiting for you." My heart slammed against my ribs. I looked at the woman again. She still hadn't moved, but now I could hear a faint hum, like a voice just out of reach. I backed away, my sneakers scuffing the floor. The hum grew louder, sharper, until it was a wordless chant vibrating in my skull. I turned and bolted for the stairs, but halfway up, I heard footsteps, heavy, uneven, coming from below. I risked a glance back. The woman was gone, but now there was a man at the bottom of the stairs, tall and hunched, his face hidden under a cap. He didn't run, didn't call out, just climbed one slow step at a time. I burst into the main concourse, a wide, empty space with locked ticket booths and a single flickering exit sign. My phone buzzed again. Don't leave. I ignored it, sprinting for the street, but the sign flickered out, plunging the hall into shadow. I skidded to a stop. 3 figures stood between me and the exit, dark silhouettes, motionless, their outlines blurring in the dim light. My throat tightened. I spun around, but the man from the stairs was there now, blocking the way back, closer than before. Panic took over. I remembered the service door near the tracks, something I'd seen maintenance crews use. It was a long shot, but I had no choice. I darted down a side corridor, the air thick with the stench of mildew and oil. The door was there, rusted but unlocked. I shoved it open and stumbled into a narrow tunnel, the walls slick with condensation, the only light a faint red glow from an emergency bulb. I ran, my breath ragged, the sound of my footsteps bouncing off the concrete. Behind me, a scrape, like nails on metal, echoed through the tunnel. I didn't look back. The tunnel curved, then split, one path sloping up, the other down. I went up, praying it led somewhere safe. My phone buzzed again. You can't run forever. I cursed and kept going, the air growing heavier, the walls closing in. Then I saw it, a grate ahead, streetlight filtering through from above. Freedom. I lunged for it, but a shadow moved in front of me, a figure, tall and thin, standing just beyond the grate. I froze. More shadows joined it, silent and still, their shapes indistinct. The scraping sound was everywhere now, pressing in from all sides. I backed away, heart pounding, and tripped, falling hard on the concrete. When I looked up, the shadows were gone. The grate was clear. I scrambled to my feet, shoved it open, and climbed out onto a quiet street, gasping in the cold night air. The subway entrance was a block away, its lights buzzing faintly. I didn't stop running until I was home, doors locked, lights blazing. Later, I checked my phone. The photo, the texts, they were gone, like they'd never existed. I tried to tell myself it was exhaustion, a trick of the mind. But I haven't taken the subway since. And sometimes, when the wind howls outside, I swear I hear that whistle again, low and sharp, calling me back. London, 1:12 a.m. The platform at King's Cross Street Pancras Station was nearly deserted, the air heavy with the damp, metallic tang of the underground. Mia adjusted her scarf, her boots echoing faintly against the tiled floor as she paced near the edge of the platform. The last Northern Line train was due any minute, and she was desperate to get home after a late shift at the bar. Her phone battery was at 3%, just enough to check the time before it died. A handful of people lingered nearby. An older woman clutched a tattered shopping bag, muttering about delays. A guy in a leather jacket, probably a Noah, given how common the name was on X lately, scrolled through his phone, earbuds in. And at the far end of the platform, a figure in a long gray coat stood perfectly still, their back to Mia, their face hidden beneath a wide-brimmed hat. Something about them made her stomach twist, though she couldn't say why. The rumble of the approaching train cut through the silence, and Mia let out a shaky breath. The red and white tube train screeched to a stop, doors sliding open with a mechanical groan. She stepped inside, choosing a seat near the middle of the car. Noah boarded too, slumping into a seat across from her, while the older woman shuffled into the next car. The figure in the gray coat didn't move from the platform, or so Mia thought. As the doors hissed shut, she glanced out the window and saw them standing there, still as stone. The train jolted forward, plunging into the tunnel. The lights buzzed overhead, casting a harsh glow over the scratched plastic seats. Mia leaned her head against the window, the cool glass soothing her tired eyes. But then, the train slowed unexpectedly, the brakes squealing. The lights flickered, and the car lurched to a stop. Mia sat up, her pulse quickening. A crackling voice came over the intercom. Apologies for the delay, unforeseen issue, please stand by. The words were clipped, swallowed by static. She glanced at Noah, who pulled out an earbud and frowned, muttering, "Typical bloody tube." Minutes dragged on. The air grew colder, the musty smell of the tunnel seeping into the car. Mia hugged her arms, trying to ignore the unease gnawing at her. Then the lights went out completely. Darkness swallowed the car. Mia's breath caught, and she fumbled for her phone, but it was dead. Across from her, Noah swore under his breath, his own phone screen casting a faint glow. "What the hell's going on?" he said, his voice tight. That's when Mia heard it, a low, rhythmic tapping, like fingers drumming on metal. It was coming from the far end of the car. She squinted into the shadows, her heart hammering. Noah turned his phone's flashlight on, swinging the beam toward the sound. The light caught a figure standing at the end of the car. It was the person in the gray coat, their hats still obscuring their face. Mia's blood ran cold. How had they gotten on the train? She hadn't seen them board. "Hey!" Noah called, his voice sharp. "You all right, mate?" The figure didn't respond. Instead, they took a step forward, their movements slow and deliberate. The tapping stopped, replaced by a faint whisper, words Mia couldn't make out, slithering through the air like smoke. Noah stood, holding up his phone. I said, "Are you all right?" His tone wavered, bravado crumbling. The figure kept advancing, and as they passed under a flickering emergency light, Mia saw something that made her stomach drop. Their feet weren't touching the ground. They hovered an inch above the floor, their coats swaying as if caught in a breeze that didn't exist. "Noah," Mia whispered, her voice trembling. "We need to move." He nodded, eyes wide, and they stumbled toward the door connecting to the next car. Mia yanked at the handle, but it wouldn't budge. Behind them, the whispering grew louder, sharper, like a chorus of voices overlapping in a language she didn't know. Noah banged on the door. "Come on, open," he shouted. Mia turned, her back pressed against the glass, and saw the figure was closer now, too close. The hat tilted up, revealing not a face, but a hollow, swirling darkness where one should have been. It pulsed, pulling at her, drawing her in like a tide. Mia's knees buckled, her vision blurring. She felt herself slipping toward it, the whispers wrapping around her mind, calling her name. Noah grabbed her arm, yanking her back. "Mia, snap out of it," he yelled. The train jolted suddenly, the lights flickering back on. The figure vanished, leaving only the faint echo of whispers in the air. Mia gasped, clutching Noah's sleeve as the train began to move again, picking up speed. They sat in silence, the hum of the tracks filling the void. Mia's hands shook as she stared at the floor, trying to process what she'd seen. Then she noticed it, a single gray feather, lying where the figure had stood. She didn't dare touch it. The train pulled into Camden Town Station, and Mia and Noah bolted out, racing up the escalators into the frigid night air. They didn't speak, didn't look back, but Mia felt it, a weight, a presence lingering just behind her. Back in her flat, she locked the door and sank onto the couch. The feather's image burned into her mind. She told herself it was over, that she was safe. But when she closed her eyes, the whispers returned, soft and insistent, threading through her dreams. And somewhere, deep beneath London streets, the tube rumbled on, carrying secrets no one dared to uncover.